Now We Talk. And as we come together, the objective of the precinct, the objective of the State Department, the objective of all of you in coming is so that we could share time together and share ideas, to agree, to disagree, to consider. So that's what we're going to do. You know, as we've separated this room, we separated into challenges. We separated into climate. We separated into gender. We separated into economic transparency. We're here to have a discussion about the Magna Carta of the future. And so rather than ask about problems, I'd ask you, and I want to hear from you, what type of solution is the Magna Carta? What solutions does it lead us to? What solutions did we know which solutions it created in 1215? What are the solutions the Magna Carta gives us today? A framework. Say more.
A framework for other countries who are looking at challenges in their countries and to be inspired by.
Everyone hear that? So the Magna Carta is a framework. It's a solution as a framework for other countries to be inspired by. As you think about that, have you been inspired by the Magna Carta? And if so, it's easy to say yes. How? Please, Lola.
I think the barometer to gauge what our government is doing.
I'm sorry, say again.
It's a barometer, as in like a measure.
Okay.
To really, see whether our government is really working or not.
So the Magna Carta is a barometer so that we might be able to see the way the Nigerian government, because you're from Nigeria, is working or not. Other ways that the Magna Carta, or in fact, the leadership we have in this country with Jefferson, with Madison, with Monroe, in what ways are these documents solutions? Framework might be one. Duncan?
I think ideas that inspire specific change in whatever sector could be the judicial systems, could be how we do business, how we govern our people.
So Secretary Ryan talked about a number of different sectors that, in fact, this document might inspire us. How we do business, how we inspire people. Please, tell us about another solution.
Sustainability, the common thread. Economic sustainability, human sustainability, environmental sustainability. That's what brought it 800 years, and what happens to the next 800 years.
So a document that, as Secretary Ryan reminds us, written with quill, signed with wax, might still have resonance, might still have value, even as the media have changed. And that it is that sustenance that we get from it. Now, has the document's relevance changed over time? We've talked about it being inspiring. We've talked about it being a framework. A framework might be a skeleton we build on. And I'd ask, is the Magna Carta as useful in one form in one country as it might be in another country? Or might there be some places where the body of the way we think about our civil society differs, even as we begin with the same framework, the same inspiration, the same sustainability? Please.
I think one of the things that is inspiring about Magna Carta's endurance, because I agree with the point about sustainability, is that it is a vessel in which many, many things can be put.
Yes.
And we are now putting international content into it. So I think, not only just within each country is Magna Carta significant, but the fact we're here today on the 800th anniversary talking about global context, learning from each other, sharing standards that can inspire each other. I mean, this isn't something that could have happened even 10, 20 years ago in this country, much less around the world. So I think we're at the verge of something very different. It's related to Magna Carta, it's rule of law, but it's really global rule of law we're discussing, it seems to me.
So how do we have a global community that would agree to institutions, beliefs, and values when so many of us in this room have so many distinctly different histories, different morals? How do we all agree and create as Dr. Hansen suggests, a global living Magna Carta? How do we do it? Please, Rumbi.
I think the principles on which it is based and from which it derives by universal human dignity, justice, and freedom. And so those are international, global principles that every individual identifies with wherever they are from. So that's the basis of why it applies in every situation.
So Rumbi, if I could be so bold. What you've said is the sort of thing we can all agree. I think you've said. Things that I'm sure no one in this room would disagree. But as Secretary Ryan points out, the arc of time actually is quite noisy. It doesn't always work the way we want. Everyone will acknowledge and agree with you. Yet we still have challenges in living those values you've mentioned. Why? If they're universal, do we have challenges? Please.
It's also a framework for civil disagreement.
Ah.
The agreement is, that's the nice part, but it's a framework for resolving civilly disagreement. And that arguably is as important of any of the founding principles of the Magna Carta.
I'm so pleased that Cassandra Butts is reminding us that this came out of a conflict. In fact, this was a moment when members of a feudal society were saying, we'd like to know how to go forward with you, but we'd like to change the status quo. This is a document of change and finding out how we might disagree. And we heard earlier today that, in fact, the document that's created in 1215 isn't even honored by 1216. And so we're talking the reality that we all agree to these universal human truths, but we have real challenges making them happen within our nations. But if it's a global document, as Dr. Hansen tells us, is it a document that can help us talk across nations? What is it that our leaders across nations as they speak to each other could learn, could take away, could use as universal in a document like the Magna Carta? And it's okay to be specific if you can think of a specific instance. None? Oh.
What the challenges of different countries are and how they have to react to those challenges. So it forms a basis for that discussion and training and education on and around those issues.
So, Mr. Miano, you were in the climate change discussion, is that correct? And we heard this morning Jessica Matthews talking to us about how, in fact, this thing that we might all agree in some way about the importance of the climate, the planet we all share, is in fact something that it's very hard to get all of us to agree about how we should proceed. Who should take less? Who should take more? These are the ways that we agree, again, Rumbi, to the basics. But as Mr. Bayer said, the devil's in the details. And the details may be where this document gives us a framework, but the details may be where we have challenges in piecing things together. Sir?
I just wanted to add that the document's an invitation also for leaders who have power to share the power and to share responsibility for the solutions that face their society at that moment. The principle of subsidiarity and to let others, let the barons in this case, share the authority of running the country, which is democracy against dictatorship.
So when we think of someone that's a monarch, giving away elements of power, elements of structure, but in fact thereby strengthening a nation going forward. That is, in fact, by being vulnerable, you make yourself more powerful. Is that easy? It happens every day. Leaders are known to do this. Yes? A silence fell over the room.
It's not easy, but it's smart.
It's not easy, but it's smart. Why isn't it easy? Please. Ashraf?
Yes, sir.
From India. Please.
You see, the political, social, economic conditions all around the world are not safe. Every country has its own challenges and opportunities. So the document which has come in the form of Magna Carta, which was the first one, it forms the basis of individual rights. The countries where the rights are protected, where the individuals are respected, those nations progress forward. For example, the United States of America. And I do appreciate that, as the beautiful lady said, that we also acknowledge and accept the criticism. But there are also countries where access of information is a problem. When you don't have basic information, you don't know your rights. How will you demand for your rights? And places where you know your rights, they don't want to do their duty. So there's a tussle. So one is going through a churning process. So in that process, slowly, one by one, we'll be able to come out. And that's a struggle, and that's why we all are here.
So a movement occurs when we begin to take an idea and we begin to turn it, we begin to look at it, we begin to disagree with it, we begin to try it out, and it lives by virtue of this process. Now, I am struck again by this notion of a physical document right here in this building as we speak, written in quill with wax. And I'm struck by the ability of technology, cellular phones, smartphones, to help create the very movements, Ashraf, that you described. When we think of the notion that there have been nations that have said we must constrain the ability of ideas to move across large groups of people in short periods of time, because we recognize that the movement of ideas, the freedom of expression, is in fact dangerous. What would we say to those leaders? Are the ideas dangerous? Are they more dangerous because they are in 140 characters on your smartphone? Do they live more because they're not written in parchment? Duncan, please.
I think that's something from what you say. The whole notion of having Magna Carta and its principles, and talking about the future, you also need to appreciate what's out there and what we have now. So I think it's important now to compare to media and the civil society discussion as we move forward. Because as you say, we have these ideas. Now, the problem is they're not working. They're not working. Because the education part of it is not working for us. And I think, to answer your question, the media and the civil society, they need to have more space. And we should just handle the education part of it to make sure that they also don't misuse that space. But it's important to bring media and civil society into discussion. Because governments and our leaders alone are proof that they are not going to make things.
So we're back to these issues of the sharing of power. We're back to a phrase, the most frequent phrase I've heard all day has been transparency. Now, we've talked about that in some discourse about transparency in the laws that might involve things like the way we think about intellectual property. But I think Duncan's letting us know that we're talking about a transparency in the actions of government. We're talking about a transparency in the ideas that are being discussed. We're talking about a transparency in who brings forth those ideas. We're talking about a transparency in who agrees and doesn't agree. And in fact, it could be that our technology gives us, in fact, more opportunity, Duncan, than it ever has to share if we are ready and okay with allowing power to be shared. But again, I'm not sure this is easy.
Part of your, when you say dangerous, I would have to ask the question, dangerous to whom?
Ah.
Because very often governments, those with the power, actually, and even in the Magna Carta, right?
Yes.
They thought they were paternalistic, and that they were the best,
To make the decisions.
To make the decisions. So the question about the dangerous would be dangerous to whom? Because sometimes all governments preserve some information because they feel that it's too dangerous to let it off.
Okay. So I think at this point we're going to step away. I want you to continue the discourse with each other, and if you would then begin to migrate into your corners of the room that you were in earlier today. We'll continue the discussion with His Royal Highness. We'll continue the discussion after.